Is it merely a collection of words arranged to offer comfort, or is it something more? The philosopher Hannah Arendt once wrote that promises are the uniquely human way of ordering the future, making it predictable and reliable. They are an attempt to build a bridge across the unknown, to plant a flag in a time that does not yet exist. But what does it mean when that promise is made by 7 men standing at the very summit of the world? When they, at the height of their power, turn to millions and make a vow? We will be back, a promise. It wasn't a goodbye, it was a see you later. But in the silence they left behind, that promise became an echo, a beacon, a vow made not from a place of certainty, but from a moment of profound crisis, when their leader confessed he didn't know what kind of group they were anymore. It was a promise to find their way back, not just to the stage, but to themselves. It became the only light during what would feel like the longest winter. This is the story of that promise, a story of BTS. In the quiet that followed, the members of BTS did not disappear. Instead, they began to write. Not with ink and paper, but with music, with art, with brutal honesty. The era of solo work was not a separation. It was a correspondence. 7 distinct personal letters sent to a world that was waiting. As the poet John Donne once wrote, "More than kisses, letters mingle souls." And these letters were designed to do just that. First came the letters of departure and discovery. J-Hope's was a letter he had kept locked away, a confession of the extremely dark, raw side that lived beneath his sunny exterior. With Jack in the Box, he opened Pandora's box, unleashing his ambition, his anxieties, and his artistic greed to show the world his full, untamed self. It was a letter of radical honesty, a necessary unveiling before he could return whole. Then came a love letter from the eldest, Jin, sent just before he left. The astronaut was a pure message of affection, co-written with Coldplay out of conversations about having to leave for a while. Using a cosmic motif that has long connected him to ARMY, he imagined himself as a traveler whose true home was with his fans, a light shining towards him in the darkness. It was a letter of reassurance whispered to the stars, a promise that he would find his way back to his galaxy. R.M.'s letter, Indigo, was a philosophical treatise. It was an archive of his 20s, a museum of his soul bound in sound. He wrestled with the very nature of identity, confessing that fame had become shackles and that his deepest desire was to be a human, for I do some art. This was not a pop album, it was a deeply personal document, a letter asking us to understand the man, Kim Namjoon, who carried the weight of the leader, RM. These were followed by letters written from the very heart of the storm. Jimin's face was a tear-stained confession, born from the loneliness of the pandemic and the encouragement of his brothers. The title itself was a command to confront the vulnerable mind, the unexposed wounds. With raw lyrics about being lost and finding freedom, it was a letter that bravely said, "This is the pain I hid. This is me facing myself." Suga's D-Day was the final letter in a long, painful trilogy. It was a message of catharsis, of liberation from the anger and expectations that had defined his past. In the music video for Higum, he symbolically killed his former self, a version corrupted by the past to be reborn. Through the shattering vulnerability of amygdala, he confronted his deepest traumas, not to erase them, but to finally set himself free. It was a letter that declared, "I am no longer a prisoner of my past. I am ready to begin again." And then there were the letters that looked outward to the world and to the self. V's layover was a quiet postcard from a place of rest. It was intentionally slow, a resting period between 2 journeys. It wasn't a grand statement, but a gentle whisper, a moment of reflection to ensure he was on the right path before the next chapter began. It was a letter that said, "I am here, finding my own pace. The journey will continue soon." Finally, Jungkook's Golden was a letter to youth itself. As the Golden Maknae, he stepped fully into his identity as a global pop artist, chronicling the universal story of love's cycle. from the dizzying heights of infatuation to the depths of heartache and the hope of a new dawn. It was a letter that told a story that was both his and everyone's. A final shimmering chapter of growth before the return. 7 men, 7 journeys, 7 letters. They had to deconstruct the monument of BTS to show the 7 pillars that held it up. They had to speak their individual truths so they could return to write their next chapter together. And so the silence began. A world without a new BTS song. A calendar without a comeback date. But this silence was not empty. It was a space filled with the echoes of a promise, a conversation held across time between 7 men and the millions who waited. The bond did not go dormant. It became an active living thing. The most consistent echo came from Jin, the first to leave. His painstakingly pre-recorded monthly videos became letters from the front lines of the wait. It was a simple, profoundly thoughtful act that sent a constant, gentle reminder. Even in his absence, he was thinking of ARMY. He was still present, and ARMY answered, understanding that waiting is not a passive act. They sent old songs like Spring Day, their anthem of longing, back to the top of global charts, a symbolic message sent into the silence. We are still here. We are waiting. This dedication transformed into a global force for good, as fan collectives launched monthly charity campaigns in the members' names, turning their own longing for reunion into tangible help for others. In this shared experience, the found family of ARMY became stronger than ever. They were no longer just consumers of a story. They became co-authors of this chapter, the guardians of the promise. They were tending the flame, ensuring that when the 7 returned, the world they had built would be waiting, brighter and warmer than they had left it. As the poet Hal Borland wrote, "No winter lasts forever, no spring skips its turn." For nearly 2 years, the promise was a thing of faith, an abstract hope held in the heart. But then, the ice began to break. In June of 2024, the first flower bloomed. Kim Seokjin, the eldest, who was the first to leave, became the first to return. The sight of him stepping back into the world as a civilian was the first tangible proof that the seasons were indeed changing. He was met by his brothers, RM's saxophone, a quirky, heartfelt fanfare for his return, and almost immediately he was back where he belonged, Live on Weavers. His first priority, not rest, but reconnection. Then, in October, a second flower appeared. J-Hope was discharged, his return confirming that this was not a singular event, but a pattern of renewal. The anticipation was so immense that the agency had to ask fans not to crowd the discharge site, a testament to the power of this slow, unfolding reunion. But the most cathartic moment was a single photograph, a quiet picture shared with the world, all 7 members together again. Jin, J-Hope, RM, Suga, Jimin, V, and Jungkook. In that frame, the abstract promise became a concrete reality. The constellation was realigning. This feeling was amplified when, at J-Hope's final solo concert, all the members gathered to support him, singing Spring Day together, the song of longing finally turning into a song of reunion. It was, as Johann Wolfgang von Goethe described, a winter tree. Who would think that those branches would turn green again and blossom? But we hope it, we know it. The world had hoped, and now it knew. Spring was no longer a distant dream. It was here. The first flowers of spring were a quiet, personal joy. But what comes next is a global phenomenon. The promise, once a whisper, is about to become a thunderous roar. With the final members returning in June of 2025, the wait is officially over, and their agency, HYBE, made it official, plastering their entire Seoul headquarters with a simple, powerful message. We are back. This is not just a comeback, it is being hailed as a global reset, the biggest entertainment event of the decade. The numbers alone tell a staggering story. In the weeks of the members' final discharges, HYBE's stocks surged, a clear sign of investor confidence in what the world knows as the BTS effect. Economists and analysts project that their return could have an unprecedented financial impact, with a single concert capable of generating nearly $1 billion for a local economy. They have returned not just as artists, but as a strategic national asset, a global financial power rebooting itself, and the members themselves have confirmed what's to come: a new album forged from the fires of their individual journeys, a world tour that will shatter every conceivable record, and a documentary that will tell the story of this very reunion. Clues point to a return as early as September, a date circled on the calendars of millions, sparked by a simple notice about fan club renewals. The quiet promise made in a moment of vulnerability has blossomed into the most anticipated event in modern music history. The 7 men who left to find themselves are returning as an undeniable force, ready to reclaim their throne. Soft CTA. Are you ready for what's coming? Tell us in the comments what you're most looking forward to about their return. They are not the only ones who have changed in these years. Think about who you were when they first made that promise. Think about who you are now. The years of waiting were not empty. They were a journey you took too. A time of growth, of finding strength, of learning to persevere. As RM once urged the world, you are learning to speak yourself. The story of this reunion is not about returning to the past. It is about 2 galaxies, once intertwined, that drifted apart only to be drawn back together by an unbreakable gravity. It is a meeting of new selves. The 7 members, having explored their own truths, are returning not as they were, but as more complete, more authentic versions of who they are meant to be. And ARMY, having transformed waiting into action and silence into a symphony of support, is more resilient, more united than ever before. RM once said, "These faults and mistakes are what I am, making up the brightest stars in the constellation of my life." In this long winter, both BTS and ARMY have added new stars to their constellations. Now they will meet again, not as the same people who said goodbye, but as 2 brilliant collections of stars, ready to merge and create a light brighter than anything the world has ever seen. The longest winter is over. The promise is about to be fulfilled, and when it happens, we hope this story has served as a companion in the wait. If it did, stay with us to see the dawn. It's always brightest from here.